Just want to welcome everyone that we're seeing kind of pop in and out today to the Arizona chapter of the FMMA. And today our special guest is Mr. John Harvey, and we're going to talk with John a little bit about what are medical providers missing out on and get his perception on, for someone who's trying to refer into the medical community from an employer standpoint, some of the challenges that they're having. We kind of want this to be very much a open-ended type of discussion, meaning, you know, if there's something you have a question on that there's not too many of us on here that we can't ask questions. So let's not be afraid to pick on John. He's small, but I think we can take him. So it shouldn't be a problem. First of all, before we do that though, what we started a couple months ago was just kind of going around the table and saying, you know, what kind of wins have we had out there in the FMMA world in the last month? And let's see, we could go to the right here. You want to go first, Dr. Kendrick?
Sure, yeah. But we've had several cases where we were able to get into a provider to get a transparent price. Specifically in ENT, we have a couple of good ENTs on our side of town that we've been able to get transparent pricing on. So that's those things.
What type of cases are those, Dr. Johnson? Like what type of, so just so people are listening, like, you know, what kind of things are out there that are coming in that need to be referred out?
Yeah, so if you need, for example, you know, your adenoids taken out or something like that, then in a typical system, your insurance would get billed for however much that's going to cost, and then there'd be some negotiation back and forth, and depending on the facility, you know, the plan is going to get stuck with I'm too quiet, they say. So there's of course the amount that's going to get billed to the plan, and then the patient has their amount that they end up getting billed, and none of that is known beforehand in a typical situation. But with the ENT that we've been working with, we've been able to get first of all the facility to give us an actual facility fee first, and the ENT to give us a price, and so you know, there's no surprises in that. So that's been a big win for a couple of patients to be able to avoid that you know, unexpected bills at the end.
And I think that's one of the important things to talk about as we move into this. There's the employee costs, and sometimes what they see in their deductible and their responsibility, and you know, maybe they have a deductible or their patient responsibility, but there's also what the plan costs, what it costs the entire system. And when we look at that cost and we look at doing direct contracting, John, what would you say the average savings is from a BUCA, say, I need my tonsils and adenoids removed, versus a direct contract cost? What would you say the difference in price would be on something like that?
So bill charges versus cash versus going through a network is it? I guess savings. Well, it's about a 70%.
What is the healthcare? What is the cost to the health plan in each of those scenarios?
The cost of the health plan would be about 30% of those. Is that what you're asking, Tim? I think the AC just kicked in here and finally got you now. So
if there's a procedure,
yeah,
okay, that's being done and there's a facility fee and all those things, and all that gets billed through the plan, there's a cost to the plan.
Sure.
Going through a BUCA. And in direct marketing, there's a cost what is the difference in price, what you've seen typically and what you've been able to negotiate through your plans, for something like that?
Yeah, about 40%.
40% difference. And where does, in your opinion, where does that 40%, where does that savings come from? Does that come from the physician's back, or does that come from, we're paying the facility less? What do you notice?
Actually, we had a great mutual small win with a physician here in Arizona that was a plastic surgeon, and to quote him, 1/3 of the cost through Abuka is admin related. We're dealing with all the pre-cert and all the pre-qualification, pre-note, pre-authorization, 10 different words for the same thing.
Yep.
So getting rid of that was about 30% less time him and his staff needs to deal with it. So, there's 30% of that right there.
So did he actually make less money then?
He made more money.
He made more money.
And reduced it even further than that normal margin we see. But he was able to articulate, hey, this is how much Buka cost me to get patients at a lower or higher amount, depending on, we get network or not. But I thought that was really good as far as I was surprised that he knew that he could speak to that level.
And probably in part because he was a plastic surgeon, right?
Yeah.
Like he does cash work and insurance work, and so he has the ability to compare the two. I think from what we've heard from some of the other surgeons we've spoken with, a lot of them have not even figured out how much it's costing them to go through insurance and really don't know what their price is.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's what Tim kind of threw me for a minute, because when I think direct pricing, I think dollar amount, and then Buka, I think percent of what convert, and which aren't comparable. So you're right. We just need to, you could speak to that. That's what we need across every specialty out there.
Sure.
And then before you know it, I don't know if I have to close the loop. He wanted to join these meetings and be part of a movement, which is good. I would too. It's paid more and less overhead and upfront.
Good. Anyone else have any wins over the last month?
Emma? Yeah, it's Emma.
Oh, did you call me?
No.
Kevin?
Oh, it was Mom that called you.
Great win.
Are you at work?
This is awesome.
Kind of.
Bill, if you can beat that one, let's go.
Yeah,
What's that? I think that's funny. That's not me. I'm not talking to my mom.
Yeah, I can't call you.
This is officially the topic on a lot of, I don't know how the eavesdrop on mom's call. That's pretty good. All right.
I think Kevin was trying to say something there, but I don't know if his connection was very good. Maybe he'll hop back in here. Bill, what's been new in your world?
Well, we just actually came up with an analysis. I don't know if it's a win yet. So but I think it's going to be a win. So as a lot of you know, when we do an analysis, we actually come up with what is the claim and where was it the least expensive, like how close. And we actually just came up with an analysis that's using that data that says that gradiates it. And we were doing some sample data for customers, and like 96% of the savings of shopping is less than a mile away. So, and you end up with this massive, like 15 to 18% savings in drugs if you just shop. I mean, from store to store, and most of it is all within just a mile. So we actually we're comparing. We have a thing. We're not sure we're ready to release it yet because it points very poorly at CVS, but it is a worst offender sheet that talks about specific drugs at specific drug stores and how much they cost on a claim aggregated basis. So we're doing a lot of analysis to figure out exactly how this free, it all comes down to free market principles when you start to shop and you know the prices. And if you know the prices and you can see them, what does that do and how does that change behavior? So we're doing a lot of data on that. And we think we're on our way to making some pretty great breakthroughs from an overall analysis for existing customers on, hey, this education for your employees will save you this amount of money in these drugstores in this amount of time. So that's coming.
That's great. That's great. And that's something you'll be able to share with the people that are currently with you with Drexy?
Absolutely.
Cool. Hi, Dr. Brown.
Hello, how are you? Sorry I'm late.
No, you're welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We're just kind of passing the baton around or the microphone around, saying what kind of direct contracting wins and things people have done over the last month before we kind of jump into our Q&A with John today.
Okay. Well, if it's my turn, I've actually made some good headway. I have connected with my main surgery center and to get bundle pricing and cash pricing. They're separate things. So we'll use the bundle pricing for people who want to use their insurance, but may have high deductibles or have other creative things, but it's different than a cash price, because if you do a cash price, you can't submit for insurance reimbursement. So they're two different things, and they're very interested in this concept. Although it's been out there, I don't think that there has been particularly an orthopedic provider that's willing to work with an ASC that they don't personally own. I have ownership in it, some very small portion, but they are very, very excited. And I think it's part of a concierge marketing model that they're interested in being a part of. So it's going to be both at Banner Desert. Beg your pardon?
What type of procedures can you do there?
I can essentially do all of my procedures there, because even my shoulder replacements, they have the ability for overnight stay if needed. So total knees, total shoulders, reverse total shoulders, any sports surgery, any trauma fracture surgery, except for acute things like hip fractures and elderly people, those kinds of things, not so much. But most everything that I do is something that can be done in an ASC.
That's awesome.
Dr. Brown, I got a question for you. Who drives the conversation on that bundle pricing?
Well, that's the interesting part. So because we're having to submit it to insurance, there's certain things that they have to look at in their insurance contracts that make it legal. So they can't underprice it for what they would submit to the insurance company, but they can discount it when it's paid up front. So, typically, if they take Medicare and they take Medicare, they have to be very cautious about the Medicare pricing. So it's around, even with commercial payers. So if you take Medicare and see commercial payers, it still can't be much more than X times Medicare to stay legal with them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to negotiate it, obviously, to the lowest price that, there's some benefit and disadvantage to that. Obviously, I will try to increase the physician compensation piece over the facility fee, because I know that they get more than enough for the facility fee. But also having very specific anesthesia services and very transparent pricing, what that bundle includes, particularly for orthopedics, because when you're talking about different kind of pain management services, do you want to interscalene block before or after surgery? That obviously adds to the price. This is how much it'll cost with the block. This is how much it'll cost with general anesthesia. This is how much it'll cost with not general anesthesia. So all of that is part of the package.
So you got anesthesia included in?
Correct.
Nice.
And is that a direct conversation with the anesthesia group, or is the surgery?
Yes, it involves the surgery center drives it, but I'm working with a particular anesthesiologist in an anesthesia group who is interested in this type of process. I am cautiously optimistic. I don't want to without sounding selfish, I don't want to give away my idea to them to use like for other people per se, without first seeing exactly what they're asking for cost wise. So
Congratulations, that's awesome.
thank you. It's been a busy week. I'm really evil with insurance right now. So like I'm having 90 days, like it's taken forever to get compensated. I'm just so annoyed with them, but that was a big deal. And, you know, Atlas is the surgery center group that I'm working with. They're super excited about this. I mean, like literally emailed right away, give me your bundle, give me all the procedures that you're doing, the equipment that you want. Obviously this changes the conversation with what equipment I use, because some companies are more expensive for no particular good reason. Some companies are better ASC type companies because their products are good and less expensive. So that's really driving a cost analysis conversation with the surgery center.
Awesome.
Yeah, do you mind if I have a couple more questions? You're firing me up. It's inspiring. We've been really bullish on the cash pricing, not having to deliberately stay away from the bundle conversations relates to cash. It's like, can we just get the price of anesthesiologist, DME, facility, and physician? It only took whole career, 15 years, and finally we made some progress over the last year, but it was like, okay, I can see the concept of bundles, even in the cash arrangement. You think you should continue to be more bullish on staying away from bundle pricing? And I guess I'm probably overcompensated because there's so many people in the middle that are now doing bundle pricing that's not, we get paid by employers only. So, you know, not to fall in that trap by any means, but it's tough when you hear bundled cash pricing. I think it serves the purpose maybe.
I think so. I think the context is really important. So if you're self-insured and you're not dealing with Blue Cross Blue Shield, you're not doing bundle payment in the way that they are having that conversation. You're truly doing a cash price. So bundle payment is different than cash pricing. And so for self-insured people, I would stay away from the word bundle.
Awesome.
I would say an all-inclusive price, because the bundle includes reimbursement. And unless you're dealing with a commercial payer, that's where that bundle part comes into play.
Thank you. I mean, I wasn't fully following you.
That's very helpful to clarify like that.
Is this a doctor talking right now?
This is a frustrated businesswoman talking. Yeah. No makeup. I haven't done my hair. I can't
believe I'm hearing the surgeon talk like this.
But it's interesting because even myself, I didn't realize that by offering cash prices, you know, I'm just setting a cash pay price. I had to be careful with Medicare because they're like, wait, you have cash services, but you take Medicare. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? They're like, well, you can't charge more than X, Y, and Z. I was like, well, that will actually make me drop Medicare. I'm not kidding. It was ridiculous. But it's really about kind of how you phrase it and how your patient chooses to pay for their services. If they're like, look, I'm not engaging in any of my insurance stuff, like they can't submit it. Like if they submit it to Medicare, then it becomes an issue. So you have to make sure that they sign, or at least for me, they sign paperwork understanding that this is cash pay price. But I didn't realize that I was essentially violating contracts when I was setting cash prices, because apparently that's somewhere deep in the weeds of my network contracts with these carriers.
You wonder who set those rules up?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Ridiculous.
Mr. Medicare himself, big fan here, Dr. Smith.
Yeah, but you know what's terrible is that the commercial payers are taking advantage of the Medicare rules because they're actually paying less. I get paid less through some of my commercial payers than Medicare because I have zero negotiating power as an individual provider.
As a physician, that's incredible to me. That is so wrong. Wow.
Yeah, when patients find out, they're mortified. They're absolutely, I was like, you need to really look through your EOB. So you're frustrated, but I lost money seeing you.
Dr. Brown, you think?
I want to continue along the conversation that Kendrick was trying to have. Like he was kidding a little bit, but I think what he's really trying to get at is how do we take this to physicians and get them a little bit more excited, not only about how hard that is to do, but once we do this a little bit, how much more beneficial it can be to their practices.
And next month, we're going to have Dr. Smith is here speak directly to physicians, and we're going to spend this month really inviting every physician that we can to be on the call next time, so we can have this conversation. But what we're trying to figure out is how to help people to come to the place where you are, Dr. Brown, in understanding the value of offering transparent pricing and understanding how you get paid and how much you should get paid.
Agreed. I'm a fan. I think it's a complicated thing. We just have to get patients away from their lack of understanding is driving it, because they really feel that, since they pay for insurance, that, the money goes to paying for whatever service they want. And that's just not the case. So a lot of it is educating not only the physicians, but educating the public on being smart consumers of their own medical care.
Dr. Smith, can you tell us in other areas that have been able to grow this market, how do the physicians become involved, and how do they become educated and excited about what Dr. Brown is doing and making herself available directly to employers and individuals? We can't.
There we go. Yeah, the most effective way for a physician to become motivated and get involved is to lose a patient to someone who is motivated and involved. That is a very scary event for most physicians, specialists in particular. I've told people for years now that since 1992, when the resource-based relative value scale entered the picture, that since that time, physicians across the board have been much easier to scare. And that's been very useful for the hospitals and the carriers who want to torture us. So keeping that in mind, if a surgeon learns that a patient is leaving their practice and going to see another surgeon who is participating in a all-inclusive or bundled situation where the patient has no out-of-pocket, that certain surgeon is suddenly motivated, very motivated. And I've even witnessed this where you see a specialist go through the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grief pattern, where at first they deny that anything awful has just happened to them, and then they get angry. And I've received emails where they denied this happened. I've received emails where they were very angry that they lost a patient, perhaps to a surgeon at our facility. And then the next stage is they're very sad and depressed and suicidal. And then the next thing you know, they've accepted the situation and they want to know how to get on board. So I think to sell this to the average physician or surgeon is very difficult unless they feel the consequences and the threat of not participating. That's how you get people involved. There are entrepreneurial, forward-thinking, out-of-the-box docs out there, but I'm increasingly convinced that they're the exception.
Interesting. And touching on that, so you mentioned like physicians, they're used to getting their patients from being on a network or being on a panel. And the future of this is to work with either employers or someone who aggregates employers like John does with his company. And John, when you look at your group, I mean, how many lives are you affecting yourself?
When we say lives, we're including employees and their, I guess, all patients.
Yeah.
Right. So we just ran some reports about 16,000.
Okay.
That are, I would say 10,000 are dependent or don't use insurance, if you will, don't use a network. Love saying that. Don't use a network, no BUCA involved at all. So, and I thought once we got everyone out in the middle, the easy part was going to be healthcare take care of itself. And then to Dr. Brown's point was, how do we get the price on the anesthesiologist? How do we get the price in the DME? Oh, is it through the facility? Oh, it's through the physician. This physician wants this anesthesiologist. And I said, Tim, I thought I knew a little bit about healthcare. And so, that's been a difficult part. And then also letting the patient experience, the health plan, maybe, good disruption, I think has been good. I keep thinking we got to keep track of how many procedures that we've taken away from hospitals.
Yep.
And also probably perhaps let them know at the same time here locally, because I think that'd be powerful in going to them on that. But yeah, to answer your question, kind of rambling there, just on what Dr. Smith said, that once a hospital and Banner, we exclude Banner from a lot of our plans now, which has been really good. The problem is where do we redirect them to without that upfront pricing? Because it's affected what we do, getting into the billing business, and we're not even in it, and we're in it, again, one out of it. So yeah, I thought it would be easy to get a buyer and purchaser, a seller of healthcare together, but it's been hard.
So of those 16,000 people, your team helps redirect healthcare on a daily basis.
Correct.
For all these multiple different employers that need, whether it's an ENT or they need something, if they don't have a DPC on staff, they're going to need an ENT, an orthopedist, and that. How many calls would you say you field like that a day?
I would say 8 to 10.
8 to 10.
Yeah.
So any one day, there's 8 to 10 procedures that you guys could redirect to physicians, callers on the line, if they had the ability to have that pricing. And would that make, maybe a setup question, would that make your guys' job easier? Is that too easy? That's a little bit too easy, Steve?
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's downhill. It's the last 4 years going all in on Linkline. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing I underestimated the most was just, okay, you guys exchange money and service now, and we'll pay you in advance, and you come up with the number. Like, I didn't think that would be hard to do, but it's really hard.
But doing that, like Dr. Smith, you've been at this for 20 plus years trying to establish a free market. What are some of those uphill battles that you've seen in getting this going so that when John calls you, you had that ready?
Yeah, that is why the clearinghouse solution that I created, Atlas Billing, exists, because Atlas Billing is a curator of bundles, not to overuse the term. I think Dr. Brown has a very, very good point in not overusing that term. It's like the term liberal. liberal used to mean freedom loving. And that term was absconded with by progressives decades ago. But to be called a liberal 100 years ago would be the same as being called a libertarian now. So, and I think bundle has been bastardized and misused. So Atlas Billing Company is a solution, I think, for many situations where Atlas Billing Company is the guarantor. If a case is redirected to another facility and they're told you're going to be receiving your payment from Atlas Billing, you're going to invoice Atlas Billing Company, then there is no balance billing because anybody that has a face sheet and they're going to file a claim, it's going to hit my desk. It's going to hit Atlas Billing's desk. It's not, balance billing is not even an issue. The other thing Atlas is capable of doing, other than curating a bundle and working with a facility that is otherwise uncooperative, Atlas Billing cloaks that facility from any sort of conflicts they might have with their carrier contracts. As Dr. Brown mentioned, it's an issue to post cash prices, and then when Blue Cross sees that, they're not very happy. Atlas cloaks facility so that they can enter into that arrangement. The other thing that Atlas does is it is capable of actually paying for the service prior to its being rendered. And that's how we've gained credibility now with facilities all over the United States. When we contact a facility in Gainesville, Georgia, for instance, and say, you're about to lose this case, and there's a real easy way for you not to lose it. Let us help you not lose this case and work with you on pricing. Oh, and by the way, we're going to wire you the money before the surgery is done. And that's the sort of solution that already exists. It's out there. And I'm sure Atlas will have competitors as time goes by. I challenge anyone to compete with me on curating bundles, but that would be a wonderful thing if there are multiple solutions. So one of the giant hurdles was present because of the absence of a tool like that. But that tool is there, and we work with full service hospitals. We work with people all over the damn place. So that's a way to get over, I think, some of the hurdles that existed early on that now allow us to overcome even hurdles like maternity care, where there are a lot of moving parts. And so we can now, Atlas can be the intermediary to ensure reasonable pricing and no balance billing, even for something as complicated as maternity.
Yeah, I mean, that's a solid point there. Because we'll get a direct agreement or even I just remember a conversation with a big OBGYN practice here, and they asked, what surgery center do you work with? And I'm not in the business. I asked them, why do we need a surgery center? I didn't know we had kids at surgery centers nowadays. So I realized I was way in over my skis on that one. But to that point is, you have a physician, but depending on where that location is, a lot of times it's the hospital they use. And once I understood that, just had to prioritize on how to pick. It's complicated. But if we could, I didn't know. Thanks for sharing that. That's huge.
Yeah, maternity is like a toll road where you have defined exits, the price for which is known. And then you have that unknown exit over the hill that leads to the NICU. And that's why we have insurance, for God's sake. You don't know the price of that one, but you do know the price of 90+% of all of these maternity care experiences. So if you'll just price 7 or 8 or 9 possible situational bundles, you're about done. And then, you don't try to price the NICU experience where people are taking a lot of risk in providing upfront pricing. And that's just not necessary.
How do you pair that with the right hospital? Given there's such thing within a metro area, no names like Banner. Does not go there.
Are you trying to say, how can you help control the balance billing up front?
Yeah, because I don't want to make assumption, talking to a physician, which I love, and then also give the plan a chance to not, the member disruption or balance bills or, yeah, absolutely. Because you're not saying you get bundled including facility, or maybe you are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you start with one facility, and then all the other facilities realize they're losing business. And the maternity pricing is all visible at Atlas's website. And so the hospitals know, what is the number? What is the number we need to at least get close to? So it's easiest to approach a hospital that, is maybe not the biggest, baddest bully system, but one of the folks who, are wannabes who want to be more in the mix. And tell them we can refer, we can redirect business to you. It's a little different world, but all these hospital administrators know this is how things are going. I mean, I've had hospital administrators tell me they know this is coming. They're just hoping to delay it, as long as they can. They know it's coming.
Yeah, to that extent, we had actually a big hospital system reach out to us wanting to do a direct agreement. We said, well, we're not, we're not an entity that would do that. We're clients would, employers, but tenant reached out to us wanting. So I think they sense it more than even I thought maybe 6 months ago. When hospital systems are reaching out to us to direct agreement on behalf of employers, I think they know what's coming. So perhaps it's good news.
Yeah, and when the hospital says, we don't know how to do that, that's impossible to do bundling, you can just say, we got a solution for you. You don't have to do any of it because the solution is there. Atlas is there. There probably will be competitors for Atlas that will emerge because that's where all the friction is when the hospitals legitimately say, and I think they're actually honest when they say, we have no idea how to create a bundle, even for the simplest case, and collect the money, pay the participants, not worry about Stark and all this other crap that the lawyers throw in to muddy things. And it's all BS. They just, they really don't want it to happen, but in all honesty, they don't know the first thing about how to get it implemented. But, the solution is there. They don't have to do anything.
Dr. Smith, as we're talking, one of the questions John and I have been beating around is how to get the number in up so that we could attract more providers, attract more direct contracts with employers, get more employers engaged in this. How did you get that flywheel to turn over initially? I mean,
Well,
you started with one case, but it didn't become 1,000. It became one, and then, gradually worked.
Yeah, it was mostly word of mouth. And I think it's fair to say that employers listen to other employers. If the few times that I talked to HR, with the rarest exception, that was a waste of time. Many times that I was talking directly to employers, I was seen as some unsolicited salesman, and which is disgusting to me because I'm actually offering my time, as limited as it is, to be a partner in their success. I don't see myself as a vendor, but that's how you're viewed most of the time, I would say, when you approach an employer directly, if you're a physician or a facility owner. The best and most effective tool have been basically testimonials of employers that have saved astonishing amounts, even larger amounts than they were told that they might save. And they go out and they play golf and they talk to their buddy and say, you know what, my company has really, really had some success with this, and it doesn't hurt my feelings at all to share this information with you, so your company can possibly share the same success. Even competitors have done that with each other, because it's a win-win-win-win-win. However many parties there are, you can put a W by, except the price gougers. I mean, as Jay Kipton says, only the black hats lose. So the most powerful way for employers to be attracted like bugs to a light is for another employer to basically give their testimonial, and that way they know they're not just being sold some bill of goods, or here are all these undeliverable promises. That way they know that this is for real.
And you did word of mouth with employers, and it was kind of casual, but did you do any structured things where you invited them to a workshop or had them speak or filmed them and put something out? What type of things what other types of engagements did you use?
Well, fortunately for me, being right out in front of this, I was seen on national media by employers who live here in Oklahoma City. And so that gave me, that gave Surgery Center of Oklahoma, that gave this entire movement credibility. I guess the way people think is you don't end up on Fox and Friends or O'Reilly or John Stossel unless it's real. So that helped us. I did some other things. I did some open houses at the surgery center, and those were unfruitful, I would say. Again, the interest in our facility is generated from, I think, speaking engagements that I was involved with at trade association gatherings. I would say the exception to that is SIA. SIA was just full of vendors. The ERISA lawyer, Corey Cook, sitting next to me during my SIA talk, told me that within 2 minutes of me starting, half the room would walk out. And she was right. They were the vendors who profit from the dysfunction, as Jay says. SPBA was a good environment for me. HCAA was a good environment. I'm trying to think. There was a national brokers group that I spoke in front of. Whatever the big national group that has state chapters of all the brokers, they have been very receptive, which shocked me. But anyhow, just continuing to kind of preach the gospel, and eventually somebody says something to somebody else.
Tim's trying to talk to me. I'll listen in here. So one thing I'm taking away, we got a common language in talking to employers, physicians, is cash bundle versus all other, I guess. Because when Dr. Brown started talking, bundle is still uncertain if you're referring within self. When I talk, it's always self-funded employer. So I even had to rewind myself and recognize, can't assume who I'm talking with doesn't. They're not assuming the same thing. So I think it's so important that common language, because even when Dr. Brown was mentioning those bundles.
Why would you just start with healthcare costs before you delineate into those things? Why would you just say, like, getting to the brass healthcare costs? They don't know what their healthcare costs. That's where you help them a lot of really identifying that. But what the BUCA does to them and what a true direct contract could do for them. Then there's a all a bundle is or a cash pay, that's just a vehicle, right?
Yeah, you're right. So I'm just, thank goodness I want to be in the contracting business. We got Dr. Smith.
It's already done.
Facilitate payment. I mean, right, with Dr. Brown and cash pricing to facilitate payment with Atlas, we don't have to be in the direct contracting business, right? That's the best case, I think. Because that's, I think, what's happening out there is we're creating less bad networks. Anyone can beat the status quo of overpaying. That makes me nervous sometimes. It's taking 10-year step back once we create a less bad network with a little less greed in the middle, maybe. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you have to be careful with cost and price. You have to be very careful with those two words. Hospitals constantly talk about not knowing what their costs are, and no one cares what a hospital's costs are. They care, how much does this cost? What is the price? So I've cautioned people not to use price and cost interchangeably. As Jay Kempton says, the inefficiencies, friction, and difficulties of the seller are not the problem of the buyer in any other industry. All they care about is how much does it cost. And they don't completely care just about the cost. They care about the quality too. But as John has pointed out, you need to know the price and the quality. But if you can't even get to the price, you're done. You're completely finished trying to figure out value. It's an early hit the wall dead end.
And I think when you're talking and having had these discussions now with the surgery centers and the hospitals, they have priorities for different things. So they make money on both sides. They make money on maybe the uncertainty of taking care of patients that don't have a predictable cost. They don't have predictable costs because they're sick. Their surgeries aren't, not necessarily guaranteed, but they don't meet that kind of outcome desirability because they're less than ideal candidates. It's easy for me to predict a potential expense for a total knee arthroplasty when my patient is an ideal patient. When my patient is not an ideal patient, that cost is variable. And the types of implants that are used are variable. The recovery is variable. And so when you're talking about a bundle payment, people who engage in that have to take those things in consideration. Employers don't care. They're like, okay, well, if half of my employee roster is, has a BMI 50% out of standards, it's not a big deal to them until that bundled or cost payment is different. Because what's going to happen is when somebody comes and says, I need a total knee replacement, they will either fit into category 1 or category 2, healthy or not healthy, because they're going to cost different. And that's just the reality. That's the reality of the world. So there's price and then there's cost. You can try to predict the price, but sometimes you just don't know the cost. And both entities need to protect themselves from that.
You're exactly right. That's why we don't include implants in our pricing until the patient has visited with the surgeon and been examined. At that point, we will say, yes, this is implant wise, what we're going to do, but that's uncertain until the visit. We've noticed with one of the full service hospitals we deal with, they just use DRGs and they come in at 160% of Medicare. And it's, without complications, it's with complications, it's with major complications, and each one of those has a different price. At my facility, we do simple and complex.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 2 tiers, and it's either going to be really straightforward or it's going to be hard as hell. And we price those things differently. And while those prices are visible to everyone, we reserve the right to change our price after the surgeon basically examines a patient and says, wow, this patient has, they need DDAVP for this bleeding disorder that was undisclosed prior to surgery. And you just find out stuff like that. And you think, no, sorry, you don't get to throw us this stupid spitball. We're not going to take risk on these cases. We're going to do our best every time, but there is absolute uncertainty. But most of it should go away after the consultation.
So after the consultation, do you assume the rest of the risk? The risk that happens when you get into surgery and something comes up that you're not expecting. Is that?
Yes.
That's on you at that point. Once you've had a chance to evaluate the situation, you assume risk from there on.
That's right. And that's how Jay Kempton has told everyone he determines value. Value is when someone says, here's the price, and I mean it. And by that, if something is untoward is discovered during surgery, it is handled and there is no additional charge. That's the fault of the surgeon who failed to diagnose the patient properly. So, you learn as you go, and hopefully you're not associated with physicians who make a lot of mistakes. And over time, those people just fade away and they don't participate in programs like this.
And that's where the idea of bundle comes from, because they should balance out, because no one's perfect. Some things happen in surgery. But for, the 9 rotator cuffs that go splendidly well to the one whose bone is mush, had no idea, they have no predisposing factors. It's just, you don't know until you get in there and everything starts to fall apart. You should have made up the difference with the 9 surgeries that went well. And so you price accordingly, not ridiculously, but if you have 9 that went great, you had 1 that was more expensive than you thought, you shouldn't lose everything because you had this one case that was harder than was expected. And I think that that's something that the surgeon and the organization needs to kind of come to terms with. I think people have been fearful of that because they have lost in the past, because sometimes it's just not predictable and it's not really anyone's fault. And sometimes things just cost money. But if you do the work in advance and you have all the things go right most of the time, you shouldn't lose your shirt because something doesn't go as expected one time. The other part is, you have to have quality surgeons participating in bundles. Surgeons that are not necessarily as adept in their quality standards, and I'm trying to be diplomatic but fair. They're not the ones that probably are the best ones to participate. It also means that they are often doing surgery on patients that other surgeons don't want to do surgery on. So there are other considerations to that too.
So
the other thing I'd point out is we pay surgeons more than anybody else pays them. So even though our prices are low, a surgeon makes more on a bundle at Surgery Center of Oklahoma than they do anywhere else that they work, a lot more. And so when something untoward happens, the surgeon is ready for my phone call, because when I look at the supplies and I realize they've completely outstripped the facility fee that I've collected, I tell the surgeon, we're all in this together, and your surgical fee for this patient is forfeit, just as is my anesthesia fee. And so no one receives a professional fee if something goes wrong and there are a lot of supplies. We all just surrender our professional fees, basically donate it to the cause, and then the Surgery Center of Oklahoma on the facility side is not left holding the bag. That doesn't happen very many times, but it's actually kind of a bond. It's a strengthening bond and experience when everybody realizes, we're not just in this bundle to ensure that there's no balance billing. We're in this bundle to really kumbaya and make sure this goes well. And I've confiscated surgeon fees on a number of occasions when they had their head up the rear end and didn't tell me that they needed a biologic mesh for a ventral hernia. And so I didn't pay that surgeon, and I took their fee and used that to buy the mesh that they didn't tell me they were going to need, that they knew they were going to need. And you don't have to do that very many times before the surgeon gives you a heads up and says, hey, I'm going to need a $1,500 biologic mesh for this ventral hernia. And that way the bundle is secure. The surgeon's still happy because he's getting paid more for these surgeons, for these surgeries than any other business that he has.
And I'm going home. That's great. Dr. Smith, I mean, also too, I don't know, this perspective of employers that have abandoned the insurance dependency, that are, direct, they're fair and reasonable, successful businesses that sometimes I think we don't need to overcomplicate it by having a physician owning the risk. If something happens, you charge, you already have a price up front. It's fair and reasonable to charge if something unforeseen does happen. They won't have a problem paying for that because it's already.
That's right. That's right. And the buyers and the self-funded employers we deal with, we save them so much money. They consider whatever we've saved them a slush fund. So if something does go crazy wrong with buyers and self-funded employers with whom we have a long-standing relationship, they are very, very understanding if I were to go to them and say, hey, this was totally unexpected and this is our situation. And sometimes we had a case recently that went all wrong and it wasn't anybody's fault. And I split the cost of solving the problem with the TPA. The employer never paid a dime, but the TPA and I split it because I valued the employer's business. The TPA, this was his client. And so we just decided we're going to pony up. This is very, very rare and unusual. And we split it and the employer never saw it.
So the thing that I've been running into on phone calls with surgeons is the fear that Dr. Brown was talking about of risk and not being able to get paid when things are not as expected. And so in my mind, it wasn't that complicated. As Dr. Brown said, I said, well, then you raise your fees to a point where you can handle 1 in 10 cases going worse than expected. Are there other tricks to that conversation to help a surgeon, get out of this mindset that you can only have a price after the thing is done?
Charge 3 times as much.
Yeah, I mean, if a surgeon, as Dr. Brown just pointed out, if a surgeon doesn't know what they're about to encounter, they're a dumbass. And they should not be involved in bundling. Any surgeon that does enough surgeries is going to come across something they did not think they were going to encounter. But, I think about the old days before we had MRI machines and surgeons would schedule a patient for cruciate ligament repair and a meniscal repair. And we didn't have the MRIs. I mean, we didn't know by MRI that their ACL was torn and their meniscus. These people were clinically so sound, they could examine the patient and determine that the patient had a torn ACL and likely had a torn meniscus as well. We didn't even have MRIs then. So now that we have tools like MRI, for an orthopedist to not know with almost complete certainty what the plan is. And occasionally a surgeon will say, we're going to do an arthroscopic decompression of the surgery of the shoulder And if there's a rotator cuff tear, we're going to fix it. And sometimes, the MRI will show a rotator cuff tear and there's not one, or vice versa. So you just go in and you plan to repair the rotator cuff. And if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. And then you charge the lesser amount. But surgeons who are afraid that, well, I'm gonna be charging for a knee arthroscopy. What if I get in there and the ACL is torn and the meniscus is torn? That is a very, very poor clinician and someone who should not be involved. If that is their fear, then I would move on.
I also think, like, when you counsel the patient preoperatively, there's a plan. And so when I consent a patient, I consent them for this, possibly this, as warranted. And your bundled payment can include that. So, arthroscopic subacromial decompression without rotator cuff repair, with a rotator cuff repair, with a biceps tenodesis. And so, it's not always exact. It can be this range, this price range. If you need to do this, then we will do this. But you don't want to put someone in a situation, well, I've got to do a rotator cuff repair and they don't really warrant a rotator cuff repair. Or if payer is like, look, I would prefer just a blanket price, keep it on the expensive side. And then, if you're making money not having to do it 9 times out of 10, and that 1 time out of 10 you don't, then it's a wash. That's what I was saying. Like, most times things go well when you plan it right. The one time that it doesn't, then you should have more than made up the expense when it doesn't.
And you have a menu of pricing,
right?
So that covers all, and this only applies for self-funded employers, because you're going to invoice them after the fact for what you actually did. The real fear is in a patient who is paying you in cash, because it's poor form to go out to the waiting room and ask people for more money after the surgery is over. So when there's some uncertainty, I will quote worst case scenario, as Dr. Brown has said, and then if a lesser procedure is formed, I'll refund the difference before the patient leaves the facility, but I'll collect worst case scenario from a cash patient. But for self-funded employers, you're going to invoice for the procedure after it's completed, and you just pick whatever it was on the menu of pricing that I actually did, and that's what you bill.
Dr. Smith, I love the logic in your comments. Assuming an employer, self-funded employer, has access to enough like-minded physicians as Dr. Brown and uses Dr. Kendrick here as DPC and Tim Spooner as MSD solution, what role do you think medical management plays or hinders or adds? Where do they? Maybe I'm giving you a loaded question from a physician standpoint and from a patient standpoint. Do we need to do that?
I think medical management may provide a role early on until the employer has confidence, until the buyer actually has confidence that this new crew of yahoos are not the price gougers that I've been dealing with. And then I think medical management and pre-certification can go away. The one thing I like about pre-cert is it's the best opportunity to redirect. And so I'm actually a fan of pre-certification, because that lets it hit the radar before it actually gets to Banner or it gets to one of these horrible systems, and gives the redirection team a chance to actually do something about it. But medical management, medical necessity, this is medically necessary, this is not, that may play a role early on until the employer or the stop loss carrier gains some confidence. But, when 3 or 4 years go by and half a dozen employers don't even have a spec claim, I think it's time to reevaluate how much money is being paid to medical management. Also, at the end of the year, if the employer has a crappy experience, they're not going to play this game anymore. So it's pretty self-policing. If somebody's doing unnecessary surgery, that's going to be horrible for the bottom line when people sharpen their pencils and look at it at the end of the year. So people are cutting their own throats if they're doing that. So it's really pretty self-policing.
We encourage employers to, during open enrollment, and put this in their plan. If patients, members don't call in 14 days prior for any non-emergency, non-urgent, it's not covered. If that's all they remember, just that, the plan is going to be successful.
Yeah.
It gives a chance for the plan to be successful, because under the traditional pre-cert off, I mean, 50% of those are happening after the surgery from Banner. Like, it's unbelievable that that's common practice. That's, that has led to just giving the plan a chance to succeed and the patient the right care.
Dr. Brown, I missed the very first. I apologize. Remind me what your specialty is.
Orthopedics. So I'm sports shoulder and elbow, and I do knee. So
okay, I gathered that. Where do you practice?
So I started my own orthopedic urgent care in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay, I need to reach out to you on behalf of Atlas Billing Company and make sure that we are posting your prices on our website, and also ensure that we're directing patients your way that you want to see.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to decide how we can best connect. I'm hoping my email or my contact info is available for everybody on this call.
I can connect you too.
Yep.
I'll make sure you connect.
Okay, if one of y'all be as so kind, connect me to Dr. Brown, then we deal with employers at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma that have employees in Central Arizona.
Okay, great.
And sometimes people, for one reason or another, can't or won't travel to Oklahoma City. And so we're constantly trying to add value by connecting them to the good guys. And you're obviously in that camp. So we definitely need to connect.
Absolutely. Thank you. Would definitely appreciate it.
I don't have anything else. That's great. It's made my job a lot easier. We'll bring the patients. This is awesome.
It is awesome. Yeah, this is the kind of conversation that's a nightmare for Banner and the bad guys.
Yeah, it is. It's what's interesting is I'm finding more and more providers, I should stop saying that, but more and more physicians and specialists that are we're over it. We're over it. Primary care has been over it for a long time and have been more aggressive in doing this. But, at a certain point, employment is easy, or it's simple, but I didn't think it was easy. And this is not easy, but it's a simple process. Take care of the patient, be cost effective. It's simple. It's just sometimes not easy to do.
Very good.
That kind of leads into our rallying cry for what we want to do this next month, which is get something to those physicians. Kendrick and I are going to work on something that we'll kind of put out on social media and LinkedIn and make sure all of you have it to give to your physicians and invite them back, because Dr. Smith is going to be our guest speaker next month. And we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper, from the physician standpoint, and how they can, tell the story of how this started, but also how they can actually make an impact. You kind of started that today, Dr. Brown, by, how you've jumped off and gotten into this, which is awesome. But from John's point, we not only need you, but we need ENTs, we need, OB, GYN, we need other physicians and specialists to complete this healthcare environment and kind of provide a solution for these employers.
Yeah, we're reaching out on the Atlas end. We're reaching out to facilities in the Phoenix area and having some success in doing some single case agreements with the idea that this will expand. They particularly like being paid upfront. When we wire the money and it hits their account before they've done the surgery, that definitely gets people's attention. So I think that we'll be able to break Scottsdale and Phoenix down by really just reaching out to them. It's most effective when a patient is scheduled for surgery at one of these facilities, and then we're given a heads up on the Atlas end. We can then reach out to the facility, and we know a patient's name, and we know they're scheduled for surgery, and we know there's a very good chance they're going to be redirected away from that facility. Then we have their attention to enter into a single case agreement.
Dr. Braun, I assume you have, or excuse me, Dr. Smith, I assume you have some physicians in that you would, the names that you have that you're using at those facilities. Is that something you can contact them to tune in next month as well, or supply me with the names that we can reach out from here?
Well, I hope I'm wiser now that I'm older, and I cheat. I do things like call Kendrick and ask him, who is the general surgeon you like to send hernias to? Because he's in the trenches and he knows, who the good ENT guys are and who the good ortho guys are, because he gets to see his patients come back doing well or in misery. So the easiest way to figure out, who the good surgeons are is to call the DPC, boots on the ground. And that's my best cheater move.
Yeah, and we can talk to some of the other DPCs in town too to make sure that we get as many on the call next month as possible.
Okay. Dr. Brett, I got a perhaps elementary, borderline dumb question for you. Is on your cash pricing, do physicians get hopefully paid more and patients pay the least compared to the bundle of your traditional commercial deal?
In theory, yes. That's if insurance companies actually pay. But what, insurance companies will contract you for some ridiculous price. The payers actually, the patients, not the payers, but the patients actually have no idea what they're paying for a physician fee. They just see that, $800 went to the expense. They don't realize only 116 of it went to the physician. So that's a long answer to yes, it is. And the patients are happier because they want their money to go where they want it to go.
And just to expand on
It's very
self-funded
succinct,
employers, I mean,
Same thing.
they're willing to forego that any cost share, which I like to use to patients. And then Dr. Smith, under this deal here, we don't, with Atlas, to facilitate the transaction, we don't need a TPA, right? You got buyer, seller, patient, like
do not need one.
Anyone else in the middle.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the other thing Atlas won't ever do is disclose the breakdown of how the participants in the bundle were paid. We consider that proprietary, and that ensures that that a hospital system that's contracted with Blue Cross is protected from any sort of claims that they are in violation of a contract for giving Atlas better pricing than they're giving Blue Cross. So we hold the breakdown of who gets paid what very close to the chest. So the only thing visible is our bundle.
That's actually protected for people, for docs like me that are still on plans, because there are certain things, it's very easy for them to say, I'm violating my contract.
Right.
I think Dr. Smith's gonna make you, get you so busy you don't need to be on plan, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, I will be glad to get rid of them. They all run away.
Amazing.
Dr. Brown, Dr.
Go ahead.
Brown, are you coming to the conference in Dallas,
When is it?
August 5th through 7th?
Oh, yes, I remember that. I just had to make sure it didn't coincide with the Academy of Sports Medicine conference that I'm presenting. You said August. What is
August
it?
5th through 7th.
Okay.
And we
All right.
announced today our keynote speaker is Steve Forbes.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
You have a great conversation with him, Dr. Smith. I just recommended it to a professor at NYU that I talked to the other day. She was really excited. She's done a lot of work on price transparency, but she hadn't heard of you. And I just was like, you got to go listen to that podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. He was an incredibly well prepared interviewer.
He was.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Got it. All right. On the calendar.
So for this next month, we have our next meeting on the schedule, and we're going to be sending out that invite tomorrow. And we want to make this month the biggest push that we've had to get physicians on this next meeting. So the date is set for the was it the 6th?
I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have it. Let me pull it up. But we have the date set, and so what we really want to do is make sure that we send this out to our friends on LinkedIn, that we invite other surgeons, and the main push will be surgeons that will be able to directly understand how they can benefit from taking control of their practice through direct, transparent pricing. And so we will be getting that information out, as well as an infographic that can be shared on LinkedIn. And so we'd really like people to be proactive in sharing this. And I will pull that date up in one moment.
It's April 13th.
April 13th, thank you.
I mean, May 13th.
I was like, today.
May 13th. Yeah, I was gonna say, otherwise it was yesterday.
Yeah.
May 13th.
May 13th, and the time will be 6 p.m. our time.
Yes.
It'll be an hour later than the meeting. All right, well, thank you so much for coming, everybody. And in the meantime, remember, if you are having conversations, feel free to always just introduce Tim, myself, to somebody you're having a conversation with. We're happy to jump on a call with as many people as want to talk to us over this next month. So invite your friends to the next meeting, and then introduce us so we can talk to some people, help them understand what we're doing here.
Yeah, we've noticed that as COVID has started to relent, that our calls, we've getting a lot less calls, which means physicians and practices, I think, are getting busier. But busier doesn't always mean better. And let's make sure we're staying focused on making this a better system, and better for the physicians, better for the patients, better for the employers, and everybody involved in the process as we move forward. Because just getting busier and feeding the black hat isn't gonna make anybody smile other than the black hat.
Hey, the picture's a little fuzzy. Who's at the end of the table behind you, John?
My name is Mark Rohde. I work with Tim Spooner.
Okay.
He's a physical therapist, one of my partners here, Dr. Smith, and been with us for a long time. And I keep teasing him on what all this what these things we're doing with the FMMA. So he's very attracted to your accent. He's from Arkansas originally, and he likes that Southern accent. So
Yes. I did.
Well, I lived in Arkansas for 3 years, so I'm a half breed.
There you go. What part?
I was in Little Rock.
Okay. Hot Springs, not far away.
all right.
Good.
Well, thanks
Good to meet
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you,
Guys,
sir.
good night.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks.
See you guys.
Yeah.